I stood there, heavily fatigued. I watched the sun fade into the horizon. The tall grass swayed back and forth in the warm wind. The same wind that brushed against my face, causing my hair to tickle my nose. I stopped at a rest stop in Kansas along the I-70. I had been driving for about 14 hours, and this was my first official break. Pike and I were desperate to get out of the car. This, after all, was the longest road trip I'd ever been on, and I still had so far to go. As I stood there, I felt the hair on my arms straighten as I watched the last beam of light fade into the distance. The light reached out to me, like an arm stretched out. I lifted my hand to greet it. In this moment, I knew the path before me was about to change. J.R.R. Tolkien's Bilbo Baggins once said, "It's a dangerous business. Going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to." I always felt like I had to follow a path that was well established and maintained. If I wandered, I'd be swept off into the unknown. There was a cloud of fear that lingered over me, causing me to doubt my ability. It wasn't until I saw the Rocky Mountains for the first time that I too, like Bilbo, found my courage. While mine wasn't found in a magical ring, it was just as powerful. It was from within the depths of my being, a calling that could not be ignored, a strength that pulled me further into the untraveled terrain. It's the very thing that led me to life on the road. This journey started the same way it continues on. As I look back on all of the places I've been, I'm humbled by how small I am. My presence is little compared to the vast forests and tall trees, but humans aren't so small. They leave a huge impact, and while sometimes it's a negative one, it's also good. I've been blessed with meeting so many amazing people on the road. There were times when their kindness was the determining factor between a bad day and a good day. For me, it would be pointless to explore this good earth without this grace. Despite the regrettable things that are happening in this world, there's still hope. While this life comes with its fair share of challenges, the reward it brings is so fulfilling. There have been times when people have looked at me with disapproving eyes when they find out I live on the road, specifically in a 4Runner, and I always find myself defending it, as if that would change their opinion. But does that really matter? Sometimes there's a curiosity that sparks within them, and when that happens, I see that same hope. I didn't always live in a 4Runner. I used to live in a house on my own in the city. The dogs and I were comfortable, but I started to feel stuck. Part of that could be the location. I didn't really live in a place that was centralized around the outdoors and hiking. The closest wilderness was about 2 hours away, and I found myself too tired to go more often than I would go. This feeling that had imprinted on my heart kept calling. No matter what I did to quench the thirst, I longed for more. I knew that I wanted to be on the road, but I thought it would be impossible with the dogs. So I waited. Eventually, the waiting became too much, so I sold my house. I started out in a truck camper, but quickly learned that that was too restrictive for what I wanted. I transitioned into a 4Runner, and I quickly realized that there wasn't much room. I had to get creative on storage, organization, and working on video calls. Every day on the road, I'm reorganizing, cleaning, rearranging, and finding better ways to store things. I'm constantly seeking opportunities to improve my setup, maximize my space, and while my build has evolved over the last year, one thing has remained the same. I love my 4Runner. So let's talk about the build and how it's evolved over the last year and some change. First, I had to create a space that could fit a human, 3 medium to large dogs, and allow me the ability to work on conference calls. My build has evolved over 3 phases. The first phase was the most raw. When I first designed the 4Runner build, I didn't want to do anything too permanent because I wanted to see what worked and what didn't work first. I ended up building a 4-inch frame and added a piece of cut plywood on top. This gave me a little storage, but I still had headroom inside. I had no idea what it would be like to live in such a small space. Looking back, I smile at the naive decisions I made, and I realize how far I've come since that first day. In this phase, I had a rooftop tent. I chose the Roofnest Falcon XL. I went with this option because I liked the hardtop shell and it had a queen-size bed inside. It allowed me to have flexibility with storing items up top and maximize my space. I had a cargo box connected to the rear hitch that stored my water, dog food, and eventually housed my kitchen setup in the next phase. This setup worked for a few months, and then I started to learn the ins and outs of what I wanted in my build. So we transitioned to phase 2. A few months later, I decided to change things up a bit. Since I didn't have all the tools I needed with me, I improvised with what I could do. I bought plastic bins with pull-out drawers and made the platform a little taller so I could store more things underneath. I bought 2 room storage boxes and stored one up top and one on the rear cargo hitch. That's when I created a designated space for my kitchen, and that worked for a while. In this phase, I also installed molly panels to the rear side windows, and that allowed me to store additional items. I also mounted a solar panel to the roof rack. Several months later, I went back to Kentucky to visit family. My dad and I built the next phase of the 4Runner together. I decided that I didn't want the rooftop tent anymore. I wanted to give sleeping inside the 4Runner a try. I'd been sleeping inside for about a month now since Pike had his surgery, and I realized it wasn't so bad. The rooftop tent was pretty heavy, and with off-roading, I just preferred to not have the weight up top. So I took the tent off and built a more functional platform inside. This was the first time I actually articulated a design with true thought. I'd been in the 4Runner almost a year at this point, so I felt that I had a pretty good idea of what would work. I did go into detail about this build on a separate video, so if you'd like to see a more detailed explanation of this platform, go check out that video. But for the sake of this video, I'll do a quick version here. I removed the double seat in the back, and I kept the single seat. I went with a 10-inch hybrid platform build. The build is separated into 3 parts. Closest to the front, I have a section of the build divided into 2 parts. I have a removable piece of the platform over the single seat. This allows me to convert part of the platform into an office. I can keep the platform flat or have it pieced out for extra sitting space. It also gives me a 3rd seat belt for people who are visiting. Closest to the rear, I have the platform divided into 2 parts. One side has a slide-out drawer, and I keep all my kitchen items in that space. On the other side, I have 2 cargo boxes. One contains my pantry items, and the other contains items I don't use on a daily basis. In front of that area, there's enough room for one of my power banks, and that's pretty convenient. I keep my water and cooler in the front seat, and everything else either goes up top in the 2 room boxes or underneath the platform toward the front. I remounted my 100-watt solar panel to the roof rack, which had been on the rooftop tent, and I also have a second one stored behind the driver's seat. I will do a video on how I stay powered on the road, so if you'd like to know more about that, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and the bell notification so you don't miss out. Even with this much experience on the road, I'm still coming up with different ways to organize and store my items. And I'm sure in time I'll have a different build, but for now, this one seems to be working. The only thing I would change about my current build is the height of the platform. Since I'm sleeping inside, I have found that with the 10-inch build, I don't have any headroom. My next phase will probably be me lowering the platform just a smidge, but don't worry, I'll make sure to bring you along if I do any changes. But that's going to wrap up this video. I hope the content that I shared today helped you understand where I come from and why I'm on the road, and how I make it work in a 4Runner. In the next video, I will be continuing this series on with additional tips and tricks and how I do things in the 4Runner. So until then, I hope you all stay safe and have a very blessed day.